I'm pretty sure you can call this one a purge. The FBI possibly losing 5,000 agents. That's what they're talking about right now. Trump's firing spree over there, everyone, at the FBI. We're going to get into all of that. Plus, China retaliating on tariffs, but does it really even matter? I mean, look what we saw with Mexico and Canada. I'm going to walk you through all of that as the New Jersey governor comes under fire for allegedly harboring an illegal in his home, very proudly, actually sort of sounding off and saying, hey, I dare you to come and try and take the illegal that's staying in my house. We're going to get into all of that today. But first, we begin with Trump gutting the FBI. Breaking right now, we have learned that there are 5,000 names that the FBI is turning over to the White House. They all worked on cases related to January 6th and the Justice Department. And guess what? They're all possibly on the chopping block. He's made that very clear. He doesn't want anybody who is out there investigating him as part of this team, something that the left is really freaking out about. In fact, if you go over to CNN and you see one Andrew McCabe, he's the former deputy director of the FBI, he's really, really not happy. Let me show you.
This is totally unprecedented. FBI rank and file agents and analysts who make up the vast majority of the field offices who do the work of investigating these cases, of executing search warrants, of executing arrest warrants, doing surveillance, electronic surveillance, whatever it might be. Those people are never touched by the political winds that blow through every 4 years, nor should they be. They, as you said, they don't pick their work. They're assigned to the work that they do. The work they do is lawful. It's within FBI policies, and not doing the work is not really an option for them, right? They come to the FBI. Most of them come intending to stay for the entirety of their careers, 20 years or more, 20 years on the agent side, a little bit more for the support side. And so to be targeted in this way for termination potentially or retribution simply for doing their jobs on a major national security case is incomprehensible to them or anybody that knows the organization. I've talked to more FBI people in the last 4 days than I did in the prior 4 years. As John has described it accurately, it is a place in utter disarray right now. People are worried about, how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to support my family? If I lose, if you're anywhere in the middle of that career, not close to retirement, if you get fired, you're done. That's the end of your reputation, your ability to get a new job. You lose your pay, you lose your chance at a pension.
And you lose everything. I mean, forget about the people that lost everything because somehow they got tied up with having been a Trump supporter, right? Forget about the people that got in trouble because, they were being profiled because the FBI didn't like what they were doing at the school board meetings. Forget about all those people. Look, I know none of this is easy, but Donald Trump was elected, let's be very clear, for a reason. Was he not? Because Americans were really, really tired of what they saw. They didn't like the warfare that was lawfare, that was a direct result of the DOJ and the FBI and the collusion with the Biden administration. I mean, I'm telling you, I personally felt it. I mean, I was shut down on one of my accounts I couldn't access for my audience for about a year because I dared to actually send out the Hunter Biden laptop story. I mean, that was pretty darn alarming. And yet they're going to sit there and they're going to tell you, no. The bad thing is that they're going to fire these poor FBI agents. Look, I mean, maybe these FBI agents, I get it. They got tied up with the wrong crowd, so to speak. But I think what's important here is that when you see any kind of CEO go into a business and try and make change, if they feel as though there's a ton of resistance against them and their ideas, then guess what? They have to make changes because they're the chief executive. That's part of what comes with the territory. And so if you have a whole team of people that are utterly resistant to you, then guess what? You don't really have a choice. You actually have to make some moves to try and actually get your people in there, the right people in there that are going to buy in to whatever it is you are selling, so to speak. And yet now you got FBI agents, this is interesting, I want to share with you, that are looking to sue. They're trying to sue as a result of this because they are that They are that mad, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, CNN picking up on the story, etc. FBI employees, they're filing a class action lawsuit against the DOJ over a questionnaire tied to the efforts of purging the workforce. So again, more of the same. I think that we can say just more of a lot of resistance, right? A lot of resistance here. And you're going to continue to see this. So we're going to get bogged down, in this legal woes 2.0? I don't think so. I think this administration wants to move on. They want to get stuff done. And that's why you're seeing, just as we look at the wires right now, what's crossing more and more news, it's expected that Donald Trump is going to ban people that were originally born one sex from competing in sporting events at the local school and actually at the top level, at the collegiate level as well. If you were born as one gender, you're not going to be able to compete as another gender. So a whole bunch of these things going in, and this is really, really freaking everybody out. In fact, the left is saying effectively that he's just taken over the government. This is what they would call a hostile takeover. Listen to Jen Psaki.
Because what's happening right now is a hostile takeover of the U.S. government. There's no other way to describe it. It's happening clearly across our justice system, where just a few hours ago, a deadline passed for FBI employees to fill out a questionnaire detailing their involvement in January 6 cases. In other words, they were asked to fill out basically a loyalty test. That comes after an unprecedented purge of the FBI on Friday night, when the Trump administration forced out top FBI career officials, multiple FBI field office leaders, and a number of DOJ prosecutors who worked on January 6th cases. Tonight, I'm going to talk to one of the prosecutors who was fired on Friday. His name is Jake Strubing. He was back at the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. this morning, where he was escorted to his office to pick up his things, drop off his computer, his phone, and his credentials. This is going to be his first interview since he was fired. He has a lot to say, and he's going to be at this table with me in just a moment. But of course, as you all know, it's not just law enforcement where there is a hostile takeover of the government. And it's not a takeover at the hand of Trump alone. I mean, this takeover is also happening at the direction of his unelected best friend, Elon Musk. His latest target was the United States Agency for International Development. And that agency is the one that not only leads on humanitarian assistance around the world, but also works to combat corruption and foreign aid programs. It's a big part of what they do. I kind of see how that could make Elon Musk a bit uncomfortable. So what do you think he did? You may already know. Well, he removed two of the top leaders of the organization who wouldn't do his bidding over the weekend. And then overnight, last night, employees received an email ordering them not to come into the office today. They weren't given a reason or any sort of rationale. They were basically just told not to show up. Many were even blocked from the system and locked out of their email accounts.
Because you see, Elon Musk and DOGE are taking a really hard look at USAID, and they're actually going to be just annihilating a whole bunch of programs. Oh, they really, really don't like that over at MSNBC, as you can imagine. In fact, Joy Reid is calling this not just a hostile takeover, but basically the dissolving of democracy in some 20 days.
Over the past 2 weeks, which kind of feels like it's been 2 years, we have learned just how fragile our democracy is and how relatively easy it is for someone who's determined and really well-funded to steal and corrupt it. If you were going to write a playbook for how to steal a democracy in less than 20 days, it would sure look a lot like this.
Not like that, right? Not like the spies that lied, not like the 51X spooks, including the former deputy director of the CIA who actually orchestrated the entire thing. That wasn't like some kind of conspiracy to take over the government, to kick Donald Trump off of Twitter, to kick Donald Trump off of Meta. I mean, you got the Ayatollah there, but no Donald Trump, right? I mean, it takes Elon Musk coming in, buying it, getting rid of 80% of the employees, and redoing the whole thing for actual information to get out. I'm sorry, but you know what? We got to actually have a better starting place than this. 51 rather important people were led by the former deputy director of the CIA and the former Secretary of State, who was at that time pining away, hoping he would get that gig as Secretary of State, working for his big guy, the big guy, one Joe Biden. So Antony Blinken teamed up with all these folks. The email just came out yesterday. Actually, we got proof of it. John Brennan saying, yep, add me to the list. This is a great initiative because we're going to need some talking points to follow up on. We got to give the media something. So there was most definitely, it's like this tug of war, like who's going to win? And now, guess what? He came in, he's like, I'm not playing that game anymore. It's over. Your FBI is over. Your USAID is over. Your whole idea that a boy that was born as a boy but then competes as a girl is going to win all the blue ribbons and the scholarships at school, that's over too. Things are going back to normal because we're going to make America great again, right? I mean, isn't that the goal here? Isn't that why people elected him? I do believe it is. Reminder, subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff here on the show. They're saying bye to foreign aid. Well, not entirely goodbye, but guess what? We're going to actually put some thought into this process from now on. That's what Marco Rubio says. You see, Elon wanted to figure out what the heck we were spending our money on because it all just goes into this big bucket called USAID. And if you look at the numbers, they're pretty staggering. In 2023, we spent some $70 billion. In 2022, we spent $44 billion. I don't have the numbers for 24, but I imagine they're up there pretty much as well. That's a lot of money. And they can't really tell you where it's going. It's just doing good things. That's all you need to know. It's USAID, right? Just doing good things. And, if you listen to Ilhan Omar, she wouldn't be alive today if it weren't for USAID.
I am exceptionally upset about USAID. I lived in a refugee camp for 4 years as a child surviving civil war. It is the essential programs that USAID provided that kept my family and I fed and safe. It is the resources that so many people around the world rely on. And it is our soft power. Oftentimes, people interact with our country through the military. That does not create love for us, and it certainly does not keep us safe. When the world interacts with Americans through programs that provide essential need, they get to see the heart and compassion of the American people. When someone is struggling because their bridge broke down, when USAID comes in and helps fix that bridge, that creates goodwill for the American people. Yes. When people are dying of malaria and there is medication through USAID, that creates goodwill for the American people. When people are fleeing and they need just a little bit of food, and USAID is there to provide that, that creates goodwill for the American people.
So she says it's all about goodwill. It's just us taking care of our neighbors, taking care of other countries in times of need. But that's not exactly how everybody else sees it, because it seems to be a bit of a mirage here. We can't actually get to the bottom of where the money is going. And as such, Elon Musk, who is being brought in effectively as a consultant, right? He's kind of like the consultant. I get it. Nobody likes consultants when they come into your business. But the idea is they're trying to make it run more efficiently and effectively. And nobody's ever brought in a consultant to take a look at the federal government, for goodness sakes. So you get over to this big pile of cash, USAID, and all of a sudden you see, it's going to some rather weird sort of things that we wouldn't have anticipated. And Marco Rubio, as head of state, is like, no, this falls under me, and we're going to actually be smarter about this.
I have long supported foreign aid. I continue to support foreign aid. But foreign aid is not charity. If it saves lives, if it's emergency life-saving aid, food, medicine, whatever, they have a waiver. I don't know how much clearer we can be.
So in other words, if it's really foreign aid for the right reasons, okay. But if this is like some CIA offshoot, well, then maybe we should be characterizing it as a CIA offshoot. In other words, we can't have a slush fund where we don't know where the money's going. We keep doing that, we're going to be no better than Ukraine. Senator Kennedy, he's great. He's like, you know what? They're losing it. And he's kind of funny the way he says it, so we got to listen.
Some of my colleagues are screaming like they're part of a prison riot, that this is unconstitutional and wrong, and they're very process-driven. In my opinion, they should be substance-driven. By that I mean the central question here is, what were we spending taxpayer money on? Whether the president had the authority to do it, and the allegations that Musk is copying down everybody's social security number, I think that's a distraction.
A distraction, because the real thing ought to be about, let's make sure we actually fix this. Can we actually fix this? Because they don't actually want to fix it. No, because then too many people are going to lose too much money along the way. And therein, ladies and gentlemen, lies the problem. I mean, we got a really big government. Only 6% of the workers in Washington, D.C. in that federal government even show up to work Monday through Friday. This is a big problem. It looks like 20,000 of them are about to take the buyout, believe it or not, that Donald Trump is offering. Of course, it's still not enough because he's looking to trim 5 to 10% of the workforce, and, well, 20,000 workers is only 1%. We have too many people that are doing not enough. As a corporation, you wouldn't be able to function like this. Good luck. You look how your stock's going to trade on the New York Stock Exchange. Let me tell you, not well. Because you're wasting too much. But now the Democrats are going crazy. Hillary Clinton has an emergency meeting. She just put this out on her Instagram. Elon Musk, they're going to blame him, is mounting we're going to go into a German language thing. A Blitzkrieg-style administrative coup of the U.S. government accessing and editing critical systems that manage everything from Social Security payments to private taxpayer information. Join me in D.C. because we have to demand to stop it. You got to join Hillary's event because she's sure going to be able to stop Elon Musk. She never, ever stopped the outrageous spending that was going on with USAID, etc. She never cared where the money was going. Think about it. She was working as Secretary of State, ladies and gentlemen, while her husband was running CGI, Clinton Global Initiative. You know, I've said this to some of you, those that you have been watching this show for at least a year and a half. You may have heard this story. I was always amazed because I used to work at Bloomberg, and they used to have a big partnership with CGI, of course, Clinton Global Initiative and Bloomberg. And I even interviewed Bloomberg on occasion. I remember once in particular for CGI Americas in Chicago. But what struck me about CGI in general was that it was really this kind of access play. Because they'd have this big event in New York City, and all these people from all over the world, like countries you'd never heard of, billionaires from all over these places you'd never ever heard of, would get their picture with Bill Clinton. And you see, that was the stamp of approval that a lot of them were looking for. So you pay a lot of money to go to CGI. The Clintons' initiative made a whole lot of money off of this thing, but it was all supposed to be going to the right places, right? I just wonder about that, especially given what we have learned about one Hunter Biden and how he was on the take with PAPS. $83,000 a month for a Burisma board job. No board job. Pays $83,000 even a year. He was getting that per month. I mean, we're not even talking about the diamond ring that was just given to him, a raw diamond from the Chinese billionaire looking to do more bad energy, right? Like natural gas, like the real kind of energy, the stuff that the left would always dub as bad that they wanted to actually curtail. I guess if you're in Romania, if you were in Ukraine, if you were in China, and you could pay enough to Hunter Biden or perhaps CGI, then they're doing your bidding. Well, maybe we're going to end all that. And that's really scary for them. But I'll tell you, it's really good for us. It's really good for the U.S. to end all this because we can't afford it. It's one of the reasons why I keep going back to one thing in particular that I like, and that would be none other than my investments in gold. Let me see if I can pull this up for you because I wanted to show you American Heart for Gold. It is one of our sponsors here on the program, American Heart for Gold. And, you know, I like those folks. And, well, they like us, right, because they sponsor this show. You can get up to $15,000 worth of free silver right now. Text Trish to 65532 or call them at 1-844-495-1115. You can also go over to trishlovesgold.com. Trish lovesgold.com right now. We have more breaking right now on the FBI story. So, of course, Donald Trump has made it very clear that he wants to actually get rid of some of the key players over at the FBI. And we can tell you right now, CNN originally reporting that the names of 5,000 employees, individuals who worked on J6 cases, had been handed over to the Justice Department. We are now learning that CNN is issuing a correction. FBI turns over details of 5,000 employees who worked on January 6 cases to the Justice Department as the agents sue, but apparently they actually haven't turned over all of the names. So that may be one of these sort of, we'll see how this all shakes out again. This is a live show. We're looking at this in live time, but more than 5,000 employee details were submitted, including employee ID numbers, job titles, and their roles in the investigation, but not their names. There are more than 13,000 agents and 38,000 total FBI agents altogether. So 5,000 people. It's sort of amazing. When you think of the resources that they devoted to J6, that's extraordinary, is it not? I mean, really, really extraordinary. They have 38,000 agents in the entire bureau, but they felt compelled to have to put 5,000 of them on J6. So we have learned it's not actually the names, it's the employee numbers, it's the job they did and whatever they did in relation to it. So Donald Trump possibly coming forward and saying, you know what, I don't need any of these people. I don't need any of those people, and they're going to sue. But here's a question for you guys. You know, if you're a company, let's pretend you're Boeing, for example, and you just decide to get rid of an entire division within a division. Is that not your prerogative? Like, can't you actually do that? Do these guys have contracts? I don't think they have contracts. I think you probably can get rid of whoever you need to get rid of. This is one of the beauties, if you would, of the U.S. versus, say, Germany, where, oh my goodness, like it takes forever to get out of a contract. I have a friend who works overseas, actually. I think she's based out of Norway, and she's trying to leave her job to go to another job. And the problem is, you have to give your employer 12 months notice, right? So I guess it works both ways. She's like, I can't get out of the job. You think about that, right? They really make it sticky. And so it's very hard to fire people, but therefore very hard to hire people, because why hire anyone if you can't get rid of them when you need to get rid of them? And so I didn't believe that the U.S. government had some kind of deal by which everybody was guaranteed a job. It shouldn't be that way, right? It's a job like any other job. You either perform well at it or you don't. You either show up at work or you don't. And 94% of them in Washington, D.C. simply don't. Reason for firing right there. Anyway, as far as the FBI agents are concerned, we of course have learned that 5,000 are on the chopping block, and that is massive. This is major, and people are freaking out in real time. That and, USAID. As you can't cut off the money spigot now, can you? You just can't. I mean, they won't go for it.
We can brag on Marco Rubio. I'd be happy to do it, but I'm going to tell you right now, people are going to die in very large numbers around the world who are expecting the United States to live up to our promises to get them medicine, to get them help. And when that happens, people are going to remember that. There are people right now who have HIV who are alive only because the United States is making sure of that. Donald Trump says, we don't care. You go die. That's the message from the United States government. It is the wrong message to be sending, and it opens up the door for China and other people say, at least we're a stable government who's not going to leave you out here to die. That's this is not an abstract conversation for people around the world.
Really? I don't think that's exactly what he's saying. But, I'll play the Marco Rubio soundbite for you again, Van Jones. This is all about messaging. You see this? They want to say, Donald Trump's telling the whole world, go die, go die, go die. It's not quite.
I have long supported foreign aid. I continue to support foreign aid. But foreign aid is not charity. If it saves lives, if it's emergency life-saving aid, food, medicine, whatever, they have a waiver. I don't know how much clearer we can be.
I think you're pretty clear. I think what you're running up against is a machine. The Democrat machine that is going to say, you know what, Donald Trump is stealing your democracy. Donald Trump is taking everything away, and we got to get it back. You got to join Hillary Clinton gang, who, by the way, is talking about running for office. Can you imagine it? Again, it's like they just don't learn their lesson. And so they're going to run with this as far as they possibly can. In the meantime, Donald Trump and ICE and Tom Homan, who's the border czar now. They're not messing around. They're going around and they want to round up everybody that's a criminal. They're talking about sending them down to El Salvador, to the worst prison ever imagined. The head of El Salvador, the president there said, sure, I'll take them in. So there's a threat for you. So you get these criminals, you get illegals that are here in this country, 650,000 of which are estimated by ICE to have criminal records. Some 50,000 of those with homicide records, more than 20,000 with sexual assault. So we got to round them up, right? We got to get rid of them, and you got to change the tone. Because right now, even the governor of New Jersey thinks it's perfectly fine to have an illegal being held in his home, and he thinks it's so fine that he actually went on stage and taunted the federal government on this one. This is the New Jersey Governor, Phil Murphy. What was he thinking?
Tammy and I were talking about, I don't want to get into too much detail, but there's someone in our broader universe whose immigration status is not yet at the point that they are trying to get it to. And we said, you know what, let's have her live at our house above our garage.
There you go. Let's just have her live at our house above our garage. So you can imagine that created a little bit of commotion. And Tom Homan was asked about this, actually on my former network, FBN, Fox Business News, with Stu Varney today. And Tom basically said, look, you're in violation of the law, you're in violation of the law.
New Jersey's governor, that's Phil Murphy, he said on tape that he had an illegal migrant living in his home. He's since walked that back. But he did try to challenge the administration. So I'm waiting for the feds to come after her. This is the illegal living in his house. Now, okay, he's walked it back. What do you say to that kind of thing from the governor of a state?
It's ridiculous. And look, we're looking into it. Bottom line, he put it out there. We'll look into it. But if he's knowingly harboring, concealing an illegal alien from ICE, that is a felony. And we will seek prosecution. Remember, they've said for the last 4 years, no one's above the law. Well, either is he. So maybe he's bluffing, maybe he's testing us, but I wouldn't test this administration. We're taking this seriously. And anybody that knowingly impedes us, anybody that knowingly harbors and conceals an illegal alien is in violation of Title 8, United States Code 1324. We will seek prosecution.
Tom Homan, thanks very much for being with us today.
So were you listening? Letitia James, were you listening AOC? Were you listening Ilhan Omar? Were you listening the AG out in California? Here's the AG in New York City, Letitia James, who's already in the hot seat. Because I believe what she did was really unlawful in terms of the case that she tried to bring against the former president, now president of the United States. That case is going to get thrown out. I'm sitting here waiting on the appeals court, getting a little bit annoyed, frankly. Because they know darn well she had no business bringing that case, getting in between an individual and his bank, where you now have the state trying to determine the value of his assets, including her saying that Mar-a-Lago was worth only $18 million. I digress. New York Attorney General Letitia James writes, New York has laws that protect immigrants and limit cooperation between federal immigration enforcement officials and the states. Those laws should be followed by law enforcement officials in our state. I'll always uphold our laws and protect immigrant New Yorkers, except she doesn't really get that, no, she actually doesn't have a leg to stand on this because, as Tom Homan was just pointing out, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4 of the Constitution to establish a uniform rule naturalization. In other words, the federal government, if there's one power they have, it's to control the border. This is why, by the way, Governor Abbott, even though we all thought it was unfair down in Texas, couldn't control the border when Biden's like, nope, you can't put up that fence. I'm taking down that fence. And he had to take it down, and they went and took it down because why? Oh, the federal government is in charge of the border. Therefore, Letitia James, Governor Murphy, you guys, you actually aren't on the side of the law on this one, and you're going to be in a big, bad situation. And so is AOC, and so is Ilhan Omar, for that matter. AOC is out giving lessons to anybody who's here illegally on what to do, what not to do, how to make sure you avoid ICE.
because what you can do is protect people. The slower they operate, the less they can break. You hear me? This is why this is strategically important. The slower they operate, the less they can break. And so know your rights. If ICE comes to your workplace, if ICE comes to your door, you do not have to open the door. You ask them for a judicial warrant, not an administrative warrant. ICE very often tries to show you some official looking paper in order to intimidate people and to let them in. Again, remember, they rely on the perception of power. No. You don't just get some paper and let them in. You look for a judicial warrant. You look for a judge's signature on that piece of paper. If there is not a judge's signature on that piece of paper, you do not have to open the door. Number two, you can ask them to leave. If they do not procure a warrant, you can ask them to leave. You can stay silent. If they have detained you, you can say, I would like to remain silent. You invoke your right. You do not have to share personal information. They want to know what your immigration status is. Even if you're a U.S. citizen, if they want to ask you, are you a U.S. citizen? You tell them, I don't have to answer that question. You tell them, I do not have to answer that question. You do not have to. They ask you where you were born. I don't have to answer that question. They ask for your immigration status. I do not have to answer your question. They do not, unless you are being officially detained.
So I'm just wondering, let me just throw this out there. I mean, she goes on and on, right? Like it's a full-on tutorial on what you can do if you're confronted with ICE. Isn't that in part impeding the federal government? Isn't that exactly what Tom Homan was just saying? Like anybody who's standing in the way? Isn't that exactly what the White House has said? Like they have the jurisdiction here. So if you're going to stand in the way, then guess what? AOC, you run the risk of finding yourself in jail. Letitia James, you run the risk of finding yourself in jail. And guess what? Ilhan Omar, same deal with you, honey baby. Look at her out there. She's speaking her native language to people trying to tell them not to be outdone by AOC, exactly how they, too, can avoid ICE.
xildhibaanad Ilhan Umar oo dhowaan la hadashay saxaafadda ayaa tala bixin siisay dadka sharciga aan haysan ee ku nool dalkan.
waxaan ula talinayaa dadka Soomaalida ah haddii
we don't have to listen entirely to that because you know what I don't speak that language. I speak a lot of languages, but not her language. But I will read you the interpretation. She's saying the same thing. You're not obligated to answer their questions. Just state that you were advised by a lawyer to not answer their questions. So they want to just basically stop ICE in its tracks. And this is the same message. They're going to get it out in a lot of languages, I guess. And I just question, like, are they not at this point, like Ilhan Omar giving a seminar on this, AOC giving a whole tutorial live on this? Are they not in somehow violation of federal law? I think they are. Again, let me just go back to Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4. And you know what? If you're not happy enough with that, you can go to the Commerce Clause because it spells it out in the Commerce Clause as well. You do not have a leg to stand on here, liberals. And by the way, you didn't always used to want this. I should point out, I mean, it was, after all, Barack Obama that deported the most people I think that we had ever seen. And he was very sort of proud of that. I mean, there used to be a time not so long ago when Democrats were actually on the side of making sure that we had people here legally, not illegally. And how is this so crazy? I'll tell you, it's setting up a real disaster. But they want that. Don't forget that. They want that. Quick shout out for our friends over at Balance in Nature. We love them, right? Because they keep me healthy. Balance in Nature. Use code word Trish. Our really good friends. They're 1-800-246-8751. Balance of Nature. Use code Trish. I take my fruits and veggies every single day. I do credit my health. I got to knock on wood because who knows, right? But the kids have been sick a lot and yours truly is doing okay. So I think it's in part because I do actually try to take care of myself, and that includes taking my vitamins every day from Balance in Nature. They send it to my home. You can get 30% off off right now. You can also get free shipping and you get a money-back guarantee. Just go to balanceandnature.com. Check out the testimonials. Make sure you use my code TRISH. It helps the show. You're helping yourself. So take a look. It really is. I mean, I think. I sort of swear by it. But, you know. So far, so good, shall we say. The left is losing it, obviously, over this USAID thing. They're losing it over this 5,000 FBI agents thing. They're losing it over a lot. They're even losing it, this is the funniest one of all to me, over tariffs. First of all, many members of the media, especially on the left, have no clue how tariffs are, what they are, how they work. They're just kind of ignorant, shall we say, in this particular zone. They don't know the difference, I would suspect, between, say, tariffs and sanctions. Right? So tariffs are when you effectively charge a little extra for those goods that are going to be coming in from a foreign country. Whereas when you sanction a country, you can't have any other goods coming in. So China just announced that they would put forward a retaliatory tariff on some of our companies. Google, Nvidia, Intel are being hit by this to the tune of 10%. I'm going to explain to you, you know what, we can handle it. It's not a big deal. China, the stuff that we export to China makes up 0.58% of our overall GDP, our overall economy, versus, say, our stuff making up 3%. A full-on 3% of their economy. And so therefore, it really doesn't matter. But it's kind of funny when you see the Morning Joe people talk about it, because, you know, he's Mika saying 25% tariffs. Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of them. I actually said the word tariff, she's thinking to herself, and I know how much they are. And Joe's trying to tell you, oh, this is going to be bad. And then you have a whole litany of other people saying, get ready for the avocado tax. Oh, and tequila too while we're at it. I'll tell you, you guys don't need the tequila. Okay, lay off the tequila if you would.
These tariffs, listen, you don't have to be smart in economics to know. This pushes the EU.
25% tariffs.
This pushes the EU. This pushes Canada. This pushes Mexico into the arms of China.
The unintended consequences of it, we don't know yet, and they will likely be far larger than any of us can calculate.
Say goodbye to your avocado toast and your tequila. We are going to see real pain. And again, it's not actually going to address the fentanyl crisis.
These are our friends, and we are treating them like trash. We are bullying them. Now he's going to tax our tequila and avocados?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we're going to just have to lay off the tequila and the avocados for just a little while, okay? Ana Navarro over on The View. Listen, I'm just going to be the realist here. So on the avocado front, oh, they're worried about escalating avocado prices. Well, here's the deal. First of all, Mexico flipped out. You know why Mexico flipped out? Because a 25% tariff on Mexico would be a big problem. You see, we account for somewhere between 18 to 20% of Mexico's GDP. Guess how much Mexico accounts for us? 1%. So you see where I'm going. They don't matter to us. We matter to them. And what's going to happen with the avocados? You're just not going to sell them? They're just going to rot and you're going to throw them away? I don't think so. I think if Americans say, well, I'm not going to buy an avocado if it's $8 an avocado, then guess what? They're going to have to lower the price and they're going to have to lower their margins and they take a hit as an economy. So yeah, it's worse for Mexico than it is for us. Same deal on Canada. I looked at these numbers. $320 billion is what we export to Canada, roughly 1% of our economy. In comparison, Canada sends a lot of stuff here. It's like 15% of their economy. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, what happens? Canada, Mexico immediately go into recession. US, we're not doing great. We don't love it, but we're not faring anywhere near as bad as Mexico or Canada would. So all Donald Trump wanted was Justin Trudeau to get off his you-know-what and say, hey, I'm actually going to try and enforce this border. I'm telling you, there was some story I was working on. This was a while ago. I mean, we're going all the way back when I was at CNBC. And I was doing this investigation. I wound up not actually covering this story. In fact, it was quite dangerous at the time, and I just had little kids, so that may have had some effect on me. But I was very interested in the porous Canadian-U.S. border, because there were all kinds of drugs coming directly from China right through the border in Canada. And Canada wasn't doing a thing about it way back when. Then I mean, they weren't bothering because what did they care? They was just coming into the U.S. So they've always had this issue. And Donald Trump's like, enough. You know what? We got the goods. You need us more than we need you. Therefore, we're going to do something about it. As for China, same kind of deal. The numbers are not as drastic, but again, 0.58% of our economy is exports to China. In comparison, 3% of their economy is their exports to us. I was actually surprised. I would have thought that number would have been a little bit higher, but I guess they've been expanding and they've been trying to grow their domestic economy. Even all that said, we don't need so much from China. I was like, oh, what's Walmart going to do? All these widgets from China that we can't. You know what? You don't need all the junk that comes from China. You really don't. I think, once again, the U.S. can weather that storm. And Donald Trump gets this far more than the lefty media does.
We've disagreed before, and I'm sure they didn't have any idea what they were talking about because already you see what's happening. Look at Colombia. Look at what happened with that. Everybody said that with Colombia it was going to be a disaster. In one hour, everything was settled. You know why? Tariffs. Without tariffs, they wouldn't have been the same way. They would not have treated me the way they treated me, which was extremely nicely. And I don't want to use countries, I don't want to use names, but tariffs are very powerful, both economically and in getting everything else you want. Tariffs for us, nobody can compete with us because we're the pot of gold. But if we don't keep winning and keep doing well, we won't be the pot of gold, and then tariffs won't be so good for us. But when you're the pot of gold, the tariffs are very good. They're very powerful, and they're going to make our country very rich again. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, guys.
You see, no one has ever done anything quite like this before. He's coming in with a fresh set of eyes like a businessman saying, hey, you got to be kidding me. Justin, you can't spend a little more money. Justin just agreed to do $1.3 billion to try and shore up the border situation there with Canada. How is this our responsibility? You can bear some responsibility in this as well. I mean, not to mention, you're tariffing everything that we're sending into you, and the same in China and all over the world. I mean, he's fighting with the EU now too, saying, hey, whoa. How is it that you're tariffing everything that we send in, and yet we're not tariffing your stuff? Does that make any sense at all? The short answer is no. It goes back to the Marshall Plan and has its roots in that we were really trying to help rebuild all those economies. So we said, hey, don't worry about it. You can send your stuff here. We won't tariff it. You can tariff our stuff, fine. But you know what? The Marshall Plan was a whole lot of years ago. Those times have come and gone. So why are we still stuck with all these tariffs? That's going to change. And it's changing fast. Meanwhile, very big news to report. It looks like it's a trifecta. Done, and done. Here we go. It looks as though Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., and Kash Patel are all getting through. You see, they've all advanced now to committee. Senator Susan Collins out of Maine, this is a surprise because people thought she was really kind of dead set against Tulsi Gabbard. Very good news here for Donald Trump and for Tulsi, and frankly, in my estimation, the country. Senator Susan Collins coming through for the win.
After extensive consideration, conversations with her in my office, attending the hearing, questioning her there, and listening to her in the closed session, I decided to vote that I will vote for her. I believe she's committed to strengthening our national security.
Which is what you need, right? So there was so much commotion around this. Don't forget, she's Hillary's nemesis. You know what? She actually stood a shot. If the Democrats were smart, they actually would have nominated her. Instead, they nominated Hillary. And Tulsi, I can't tell you how many Democrats actually would say to me, there's this new woman. She's like this rising star in the Democrat Party. They really, really liked her. She's a member of the armed forces. I mean, this woman has risked her life for our country, and yet Hillary Clinton's team turned around and called her a Russian spy. It's like, we've been there, done that. I've heard the Russian spy thing before. Russia. Hillary's like a master at that one. Think about it. Think of what happened to Donald Trump. She saw him as a threat. They managed to get this dossier that was all concocted out of thin air because her lawyer went out and subcontracted a group called Fusion GPS. There were a bunch of ex-Wall Street Journal reporters there, investigative reporters. They went out and subcontracted an ex-British spy who used to cover Russia named Christopher Steele. Christopher Steele then went out and subcontracted again. You see all the layers? It's getting kind of murky. A guy who actually the U.S. at the time believed might be a Russian spy. And then they came back with that garbage. And then they leaked that garbage. Well, before I get to the leak, this was their reason for actually having a FISA request to tap the phones at Trump Tower. Think of how insane that is. And they want you to think Tulsi's the Russian spy because she doesn't always agree with the State Department and deep state on everything. She tells this story well.
American people elected Donald Trump as their president not once but twice. And yet the FBI and intelligence agencies were politicized by his opponents to undermine his presidency and falsely portray him as a puppet of Putin. Title I of FISA was used illegally to obtain a warrant to spy on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, using a Clinton campaign-funded false dossier as their so-called evidence. Biden campaign advisor Tony Blinken was the impetus for the 51 former senior intelligence officials' letter dismissing Hunter Biden's laptop as disinformation specifically to help Biden win the election. Former DNI James Clapper lied to this committee in 2013, denying the existence of programs that facilitated the mass collection of millions of Americans' phone and internet records, yet was never held accountable. Under John Brennan's leadership, the CIA abused its power to spy on Congress, to dodge oversight, lied about doing it until he was caught, and yet has never been held responsible. Under Biden, the FBI abused its power for political reasons to try to surveil Catholics who attend traditional Latin Mass, labeling them as quote-unquote radical traditionalist Catholics. Personally, just 24 hours after I criticized Kamala Harris and her nomination, I was placed on a secret domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies. Sadly, there are more examples. The bottom line is this must end.
Yeah, it's gotta end. And it scares some people so much that it's going to end. And they worry that it's going to get all tipped in the other. Let me just tell you, when you have one team in charge trying to throttle the other side no matter what, that's never healthy. Okay, I'm all for everyone having a seat at the table. This woman, for goodness sakes, is a former Democrat. Guess who else happens to be a former Democrat? One RFK Jr. I'm showing you the Poly Market Board because they tend to be right on these things. And 98% chance right now, Tulsi gets confirmed, RFK Jr. gets confirmed, and Kash Patel gets confirmed. Kash Patel's going to gut the FBI. Tulsi's going to think about intelligence in a whole new way. RFK Jr. is sitting there saying, why the heck do we have red dye in our food? And he's going to actually cause a lot of change. And this is frightening. I get it. It's frightening for the left because their entire system is being disrupted in real time. But isn't this what people voted for? They were sick of the spies who lied. They were sick of being told they were wrong. They were sick of being told that when they were upset about inflation, that it really was just in their head because the economy was doing just great. I literally heard that on Morning Joe. They're like, why are people so worried about inflation? The New York Times actually wrote a story saying, well, wages are going up. I'm like, yeah, what about real wages, ladies and gentlemen? Real wages adjusted for inflation. When you have inflation going up as much as inflation went up under Joe Biden, you know what? You got yourself a problem. It's one of the reasons why, of course, I started 76 Research. This is my financial research company that I started with my dear friend, Rob Horton. And a lot of good success in the portfolios. We have 3 of them for you. We have 10 to 15 stocks in each one, so go check them out at 76research.com. There's the American Resilience, which is a growth portfolio. We've got the inflation protection portfolio. We have an income builder portfolio. We have all kinds of stuff there for you. And if you just want to tread lightly, you can get the 76 report. the 76 report, which is just $1 a month to start. Use code word dollar for that. But listen, guys, you know what? There's so much change happening, and it is a good thing. It's an important thing. We need this to happen, right? So go to 76research.com and check in on that. Again, just a quick read. They're not a sponsor show. This is my company myself. But one of our great sponsors on this program is American Heart for Gold. So I want to shout out to them as well, because gold is part of my portfolio. It's actually something that we talk about, especially in the resilience and in the inflation protection and in the basic income builder portfolios. But if you're interested in buying gold, I think you should call the great folks over at American Heart for Gold at American Heart for Gold, or you can go to trishlovesgold.com, trishlovesgold.com. How can you forget that? I do love gold.com, trishlovesgold.com. Trish, you can text my name to 65532 today. You can get up to $15,000 in free silver. And I think it's kind of important to think about what's going on with the market overall right now, because if people were really that worked up about China, if they really thought it was the end of the world, then you know what? You probably wouldn't have a market that's doing as well as what we saw today, with the S&P 500 ending the day up 0.6%, actually almost 0.7%. These numbers are still settling out as we're just coming up on the 4 o'clock range, but NASDAQ ending up 249 points, 1.29%, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average also looking as it's going to end higher. So think about that. So why was the Wall Street Journal doing what it did? They had this big piece calling it the dumbest trade war. The fallout begins. I mean, boy, were they wrong on that one. Donald Trump was calling them, this is great, the tariff lobby. Of course, keep in mind, the Wall Street Journal is owned by the Fox founder, Rupert Murdoch. And this is not done in a vacuum. He's got some input there, and this is the editorial board, and they're, oh, no, can't have tariffs. You know, I guess you have a generation of people that grew up with this mindset that it was all about having an open economy, right? Because the laws of comparative advantage would work in your favor, but not always, right? Not when it comes to really important things that you need some jurisdiction over. So if it's critical for national security, you really don't want to outsource it. And you could tie in national security with things like actually having jobs. I think about where my husband grew up in a small community outside Buffalo. And they used to have Harrison Radiator there. And Harrison Radiator made all the radiators that would go into the American cars, into Ford. And you know what? Harrison Radiator, when NAFTA happened, realized they could go down to Mexico. And they would make all that. And so guess what? A whole lot of people lost their jobs. And for a while, it kind of felt like a ghost town there. All those jobs disappeared. Now, let me just ask you. Would you be willing to pay a little bit more for that car if it cost a little bit more to make the radiator, because you were actually employing American workers and you were able to contribute to the economy around you? I would. Maybe we need a little less junk coming from Mexico and China and a little more good stuff from the good old US of A. That makes sense to me. But you have a generation of people there at the Wall Street Journal that were told, no, it's all about free trade, global trade. I mean, it's fine, unless you're the guy or the gal living outside Buffalo that loses your job to Mexico or loses your job to China. And how much do you really save? Let me just ask you that, because you got to ship the stuff back. And you know, because we do not tariff these other countries, there's no incentive for businesses to keep their businesses here. It's just as easy to go to Mexico or to China or somewhere else. And Donald Trump now is coming along saying, you know what? It doesn't make sense. Why did it take so long? Look how quickly that happened. It was sort of amazing. First of all, Colombia happened in like 3 hours, right? We said to Colombia, hey, you got to take your people back. Colombia's like, no, we're not taking them back. Donald Trump said, oh yeah, 25% tariffs. Within 3 hours, Colombia, and it wasn't only taking their people back, they sent a plane to do so. Well, then he just said, you know what, I'm coming out with tariffs, 25% on Mexico and on Canada, starting on February 1st. They went into effect like for 12 hours. And before you knew it, All of a sudden, Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico is like, oh, okay, we can work this out. And Justin Trudeau said, hey, no problem. I got $1.3 billion for you right here. I'm going to put into border control. And so now we're going to punt for like a month because Donald Trump is keeping his powder dry so he can continue to negotiate. I think that's pretty cool. Like, I think we need people who are thinking innovatively about this stuff. Like, other people have never even thought about it. How do we deal with Joe Biden for 4 years saying, I can't do anything on the border. I can't do anything. Well, why don't you pick up the phone and tell Mexico to do their thing? Oh, I can't do that. I mean, Mexico can't handle that, right? They can't even take the people back, let alone control what's going on there. All of this is changing, you see. It's exciting. It's the right thing to be happening. And we're living through it on the front lines of history here every single day as we continue to grow and thrive on this channel completely organically. I mean it. Look, I just liked it too. We're up to 1.3 thousand. Thank you. It is good to have you all here. I'm looking at some new names. Mike Costa, my friend, welcome back. It is wonderful again to have so many people, and just push it, right? Leave a comment below. Tell me whether or not you agree with this strategy on tariffs. Is it high time that we do this? I think so. I think so. Mike Costa, good to see you. Luke Walker as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. We got much more to cover in tomorrow's show, plus more videos heading your way all through the night. I'll see you then.